goodness. Emil Guillermo. I am pronouncing it correctly. Emil Amok to you. Welcome to my takeout. My takes on all things considerable. And there is a lot to consider today. Oh my goodness. It just, this is one of those times when it just keeps piling on. And I think that we thought it's been now a year, right, under Biden, but we thought when we got rid of the other guy that, things would be back to normal. But of course, things are not back to normal. Of course, things are not back to normal. They're just not. But we try. I have to make sure that I've disengaged all my dingies, because if you ding, you don't want to ding when you're on the air. You know what I mean, right? Those of you. Thank you for being here. This is Tuesday, episode 255 of Emil Amok's Takeout. This is a show that I call the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs and the ALLs, all the rest of you. But because you don't have to be Asian American to really understand or be a part of this show. I mean, we speak English, we talk about American things, we talk about things that we should all care about. And there's only one topic today, right? And we'll talk about that. The one topic, of course, is what's happening in Ukraine. We're here Monday through Friday, by the way, 2 p.m. Pacific live. And I know some people just sort of catch the first 10 seconds wherever you are, either on Twitter at Emil Amok, or maybe you're on my YouTube channel, Emil Guillermo on YouTube, or emilguillermo.media on Facebook. Now, I think that's the ideal place. If you're on Facebook, you can go on chat and you can say, "Oh, what the hell is this, Emil?" or something. You can communicate with me, and then I can choose to acknowledge you or to allow you to be part, or say take your question or whatever. But these last couple of days, this is day 6 of the evil of Putin unleashed on the world, and it's getting nastier and nastier by the second. I mean, here's one other thing. I live in a godforsaken part of California where I can't get reliable service in terms of a delivery of a newspaper. Now, that sounds like a first world problem, right? Actually, who reads a newspaper anymore, right? That's really the bigger issue. But I like a newspaper. I like to get my fingers dirty. I like to feel like I've got the world in my hands. I get my arms around the war and the news of the day. And, you get a headline like rocket assaults kill civilians in Ukraine as tightening sanctions isolate Moscow. And, it's a big banner headline. I mean, perhaps not as big and as momentous as this one, which was Friday's paper, War in Ukraine, which that's sort of the era that we're in now, the new Cold War, right? Unjustified war by bullies, by strong men. And you try to understand it all. And I find that when I get a newspaper, I can at least try to make sense of it. Because that by the time I got this delivered, I didn't get this morning. They finally delivered it to my door a little after noon today. And rocket assaults kill civilians in Ukraine as tightening sanctions isolate Moscow. Well, they've stepped it up. Explosions shake 2 major cities in Ukraine, the new web headline for the New York Times. Russia hit civilian areas with increasingly powerful weapons. So they're ramping up. And the big story from when I first woke up was the building in Kharkiv, which was hit, the square there, which has kind of rocked the spirit somewhat of the Ukrainians, who feel like, yeah, they can go out there still and hold up, but it is getting tougher. Not only is Moscow isolated, but the Ukrainians are isolated too because they're fighting this by themselves. And then, I woke up and there was that picture of that 40-mile convoy. It was just, 15 or 16 the other day. Now it's 40. Although now the word is that they're just parking the tanks. They're running out of gas. They're running out of food. So it's just there to be like a symbol of your coming oppression. And the troops are they're either surrendering or sabotaging vehicles, or they're just leaving them there rather than fighting, according to Pentagon officials, according to reports. But you got to admit that if you are in Ukraine and part of you wants to stay and fight, and if you can, you should. And some, like, you see stories of these people over 60 who preparing Molotov cocktails. It's so cute, you say. It's so cute. They're preparing Molotov cocktails to fight for their freedom, because what do they have to live for, right? They're just old people, right? Yeah. They believe in their freedom. It's young, it's old, it's multi-generational. But as this goes on 6 days, you start to wonder, how much longer can they hold out? And they say the military experts on television say, yeah, they could hold out if they can make Kiev, if they can make all the cities into like a maze. But it's these artillery shells that are the problem. And as I came on here, there were more reports about other buildings being hit, apartment buildings, people dead, at least by reports, at least 10 people dead when the television tower went down. So this is getting nastier and nastier. Of course, I I like the reporting of Matthew Chance of CNN, and of course he got an interview with Zelensky, and he talks about going into a bunker and being taken, or meeting Zelensky's people, and then being taken to another place, and then going down in an underground part. If I were Zelensky, well, you got to be open to the press that wants you, and to get your word out, to get your message out. But compared to the speeches that he gives to the EU, like he gave a real fiery speech to the EU today, which was, hey, you got to let us in now. You got to let us in now because we need your help. And so, fiery, hot, the hot rhetoric. But when he talked to CNN in that bunker, the CNN guy, Matthew Chance, was saying, Zelensky looked like he hadn't had sleep. He looked pale. He looked tired. And the question was asked, what was the hope coming out of the talks that occurred yesterday? And here was Zelensky.
They decided to begin to speak about this situation. And I really wanted, and I asked them, so you have to speak. First of all, everybody has to stop fighting.
So first of all, everyone has to stop fighting. We're not seeing that. But he's pleading now in this interview with CNN,
fighting, and to go to that point from where it was beginning. Yeah. Yes, it began 6 days ago. Yes, I think there are principal things you can do it, and that is very important moment. If you do this, and if those side is ready, it means that they are ready for the peace. If they don't ready, it means that you're just how wasting time.
And do you think you're wasting your time, or do you think they're ready?
We'll see.
And that's the thing. Are they wasting time? Because they one of the resources they have: munitions and time. And they're running out, I think. I mean, that they are outmanned and outgunned. And unless the sanctions really help to cut off the financing of the war, I mean, everyone in Russia now is hurting because the stock market's down. People can't get their money out. But that's not affecting, the march and the siege on Kyiv and the rest of Ukraine. So unless something happens there, I don't know how this time thing works out for in the Ukrainians' favor, unless at some point someone says, "Yeah, Zelensky wants a no-fly zone over Ukraine, but the U.S. is not for that because that essentially means the U.S. is going to shoot down some Russian fighters, and the U.S. is careful not to get sucked into the war in that way. They're ready to support a UN member. Ukraine is not yet has not yet qualified for that, so the UN is standing at the ready. I mean, a lot of people who listen to this show, Asian Americans, Filipinos, have sent me notes saying, "Oh, what can the UN do? What can the International Criminal Court do?" Well, we saw people discuss that. Is Putin a war criminal? Yeah, he might be. There's some evidence that has been on the news is not enough. There's got to be people on the ground documenting what's going on. But if there are state actors going to the ICC saying, we must investigate, we must stop this, we must prosecute, it can happen. But does it have the effect of stopping the shelling? No. So we need some extraordinary things to happen for Zelensky and Ukraine to at least hold their own right now. We need Putin to stop meting out the evil in the way that he has. And if anything, he's only escalated it. So that's where we are. And in the meantime, 500,000 people have fled. I talked to someone on the border of Poland and Ukraine. There are people from other parts of Europe coming to the border looking to help. And I talked to a member of PETA Germany who are there because, look, this is a humanitarian crisis. The people are in need, but the people can speak, the people can take some responsibility. Who's caring for the animals? And I hope to have that up on the PETA podcast tomorrow. So listen to that, and you'll hear my conversation with a woman from PETA Germany who's down there trying to help people with their cats and their dogs, trying to help not just people who've come across to the border, because for the most part, they're doing fine. But a lot of people have abandoned and have left strays. And because of the fighting, the volunteers, the people trying to save dogs can only go to cities like the western cities and the western shelters. But they're bringing tons of dog food because there are animals in need, just as well as there are humans in need, certainly. So we'll talk about that tomorrow on the PETA podcast. But I've been watching CNN primarily because I think Matthew Chance is a great reporter, and he is able to get at the big story. He talked to Zelensky in the bunker, Zelensky's a small guy, but the will and the passion is there. But as reported by Matthew Chance, it seems that he might be a little tired right now. I just don't know how much longer, based on that report, how much longer he's going to be able to withstand this, unless a major effort comes in from the West, or unless Putin has some. Does he have any sense of mercy at this point? Because at this point, he is gearing up for well, it's just not humane. It's not fair. War is not humane to begin with, but the way it is now going, the evil of Putin is on full display, or about to be on full display. I'm sure Putin would say, "Oh, I'm just ramping up a little bit. I'm not even showing you my best. I'm not even showing you what I got." Well, that's nothing to be proud of. So I was checking the papers. One headline: My cousins are killing one another. This is a thing that I had hoped to see. I'd hope to see people just say, "Hey, we're related to the Ukrainians. We can't kill these people." I was hoping to see soldiers going in, putting down their arms. I guess in some kind of idealistic fantasy movie of mine, that would happen. But it's happened in history. When the Buffalo Soldiers went to the Philippines, the Buffalo Soldiers, they're the African Americans who fought the Native Americans. And then after they repelled the Native Americans, they went to the Philippines when the U.S. started the Philippine-American War to imperialize, colonize the Filipinos. And there was one African-American soldier, Buffalo soldier in particular, one David Fagan, who recalled or who realized that when he was fighting the Filipinos, he was fighting the white man's game. He was shooting at the Filipinos, killing the Filipinos, and he realized that he had more in common with the Filipinos than with his white commanders. It was so real what he felt that he left the army, went to the hills, joined the Filipino insurgents. That's an insurgency. People fighting for their freedom. And David Fagan rose up the ranks, became an honorary Filipino. If you don't know about him, you should know about David Fagan. I know it's March the 1st. It's the end of Black History Month. But it's only 28 days. And even if you extend on one end, say, go back to, say, MLK Day, you can also extend a little bit on the back end of February. And the reality is, hey, look, there is a lot of Black history in American history that we don't know about, that we need to know about. And I just like to talk about the David Fagan story because it is that place where Filipino American history and Black American history and Black history merge, where we find that we're on the same side. And you know what does it? What does it is, when Fagan was in the Philippines, he realized when they were saying the N-word, the white commanders, they weren't talking about Fagin. They were talking about the Filipinos. And that's where Fagin realized, oh, what am I fighting for? What am I fighting for? Not to intentionally quote Country Joe and the Fish, but I guess I just did. David Fagin, check him out. As we say goodbye to Black History Month and just find ourselves talking about, I mean, it's funny, like these war stories, they just kind of blend in. I see the headline, my cousins are killing one another, talking about Ukrainians and Russians on both sides of the border who are now opposite each other because of war. I see that headline, I think, oh yeah. Well, the ideal thing is to come together and to realize that you're one, like David Fagin did. You know, there's going to be things throughout the night about the war. You know, this is a talk show. I call it the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. And I just want to share with you something that I noticed. I mean, I'm a BIPOC, to use that term, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color, Person of Color. I'm a BIPOC journalist, commentator, media person. And do you see a lot of them on the front lines reporting the story? I mean, I know that there have been African American and Latino and Asian American war correspondents. I would like to think that there is at least one or two that I've not mentioned. I mean, Dith Prawn, my buddy, was a New York Times photographer. He was kind of the translator and photographer for Sidney Schanberg, New York Times. But there I was watching, there was Sarah Seidner, who's been in a lot of domestic, big domestic stories, national correspondent, CNN. And there she was at the Polish-Ukrainian border. And I said, wow, I just have not seen a lot of diversity in the reporting ranks, at least not on channels that I usually watch. The other day, I saw an African-American scholar, a resident scholar in Ukraine, with a camera, talking to a CNN anchor about what he had seen when one of the first buildings that had been bombed. That was great. But today, the 6th day in, there was Sarah Seidner. And it's funny because prior to this, I saw a story that bothered me because it took people to task about saying, when they said things, and people in the media reporting and using a kind of language where they said, this isn't supposed to happen in Ukraine, meaning this isn't supposed to happen in a white country. And people were critical of that in social media. Oh yeah, we expect this in Afghanistan. We expect this in the Middle East. We expect this when it's brown people. We expect this in Africa, but we don't expect it in a white country. I mean, that was the implication. I didn't see it, but in fact, I know I've encountered a few people who said, oh, is it really all that important, Ukraine? People trying to distance themselves. Look, we're into the 6th day. You cannot distance yourself from this. This is a big deal. What's happening in Ukraine? It's just superpower. It's forget the ethnicity of the people. I mean, they tend to be white, but let me bring up Sarah Seidner again. Because what she said, and this is the value of having a reporter who is a Black Indigenous person of color reporting, because they're sensitive to things like, hey, we noticed this. We talked to Asian and African and brown people coming across, fleeing Ukraine, going to, seeking refuge in Poland. And they're saying, oh, the Ukrainians were like, some Ukrainians were just getting through in like a less than an hour. But if you were brown, you were detained for sometimes many hours, multiple hours to get through. If you were Indian, there were some Indians, Asian Indians, there were some Africans. And they were telling Sarah Seidner, what she reported, that people were telling them or her that they were being treated well when they lived and worked in Ukraine. But as soon as the war got nationalistic, then it got ethnic. And then it got real. And then it was native born versus foreigner. Doesn't that sound familiar? Have you heard that before? The native born foreigner thing? Because that's real. I mean, that's a perspective you don't get if a white reporter, especially a CNN type, a young white reporter is sent out, or a white European reporter. They have a few of those. I mean, Matthew Chance is with the international part of CNN. But you get a domestic reporter who's a Black Indigenous person of color, and her insight is newsworthy. It was to me. Because isn't it interesting? You push comes to shove, and it happens. It just, the walls go back up. Nationalism, ethnicity. That's what she said. The people were telling her. The brown people were telling her. When they stayed in Ukraine, it was fine. War happened, and the nationalistic streak, the nativist streak comes out. Just a perspective that I don't know if you may have noticed, because it's real. Now, all right, so we talked about the evil of Putin. I'm going to get to the preview of the State of the Union address. It'll be the wrap up. But I think you know where the State of the Union address is going to go. We talked about Seidner, Fagan. I'll mention the Arbery case thing. It was a report that I want to touch on. We talked about Zelensky and what he said. Let me talk about Stop AAPI Hate, because this is a real thing. This is a real thing, and it's sad. It's true. Just happened. Woman of Asian descent, latest to die after an attack in New York City. Sometimes these are like little time bombs, right? Someone is hurt, someone is attacked because of it's the scapegoating by Donald Trump of Asian Americans, right? This feeling that, oh, you brought on the virus, and then in 2 years, we have 10,000 instances of AAPI hate. Some of them small transgressions, some of them more violent, and then some that are really violent go to the ultimate, which is death. And we had a woman who was attacked last November. A man had a large rock assaulted Gui Ying Ma in Queens. She had lacerations on her face and head, and today it was announced that she had died from her injuries. Actually, they announced it today. She actually died last week. Ying Ma, 61. You don't like to see people younger than you dying. And, there she is, a picture of her. She's got a GoFundMe to help her family. Ying Ma, Gui. Ooh. First three letters of my name, last name. Ying Ma, M.A. Attacked on November 26th. She was just sweeping a sidewalk in Queens, North Corona, the police said. They arrested a suspect. Now, here's the thing about the suspect. Elisol Perez, 33, charged with assault and harassment. They're going to look into whether it's going to be a hate crime. Certainly, it's not going to be merely assault and harassment now. But Perez had 11 prior arrests. What was he doing out? It just seems that we Asian Americans tend to be the low-hanging fruit for people who are repeat offenders. And, you hear the politicians in New York say, this is a tragedy. These hateful acts must come to an end. Yeah, that's what the Attorney General, Letitia James, said. Well, we got to see action. I mean, we have to see action. We had on New Year's Eve, I remember this because I was just saying, let's let it be a peaceful night, New Year's Eve. But then we had Yao Pan Ma. He was hospitalized in April. He was pushed to the ground, bashed, kicked in the head in East Harlem on December 31st. Or rather, he was kicked in the head in April. He died on December 31st. Yao Pan Ma. He had lost, his story was he had lost his job. He was pushing a grocery cart, collecting bottles and cans, try to make ends meet. Yao Pan Ma, also 61, 125th and 3rd Avenue, New York. Suddenly, it's like it's just not safe to be in New York anymore. In January, you had Michelle Go, who was shoved into from a subway platform, and there have been other deaths now on the subway. And then a couple weeks ago, you had a woman, Christina Lee, stabbed to death inside her Chinatown apartment. So it could be coincidence. It could be we could be so far out or so far removed from Trump talking about Kung flu and the China virus. But I don't know. I think there's this kind of residual thing going on. And you might say, oh, look, it's not related. But whether it's related to the scapegoating, it's part of a AAPI hate trend that needs to be stopped. And it's unbelievable that it just this is just New York City. I'm just talking about New York. And of course, I take these things seriously because I write for ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, based in New York. I take these seriously because my youngest daughter lives in New York. And you think about these things. You don't need to be right there on the front lines of Kyiv or Kharkiv or in Ukraine to feel the kind of dread and anxiety that happens when violence can happen at any time. Now, of course, you're in a war situation and you figure, well, yeah, we can expect it in war. But in American society, you think there should be a little better sense of safety. I don't know. I just know that this happened in Queens, and we'll have to follow up on all the instances where people have been hit to see how they recover, if they recover. Sometimes when they were, like in the case of Guy Ma, she's been in a coma since. And the other fellow, the other Ma, same thing. They were just waiting, crossing their fingers, hoping that they would come back. But they have not. So hashtag stop AAPI hate. It's happened. Grace Meng, who is the representative of Queens, she has come out with a statement. She was with the family of Guy Ma in Queens. She says, I'm devastated over the passing of Guy Ma, and my heart aches for her family. I will continue to be here for her husband and loved ones at this very difficult time. So many in the Asian American community continue to live in fear due to ongoing attacks against Asian Americans. We must continue doing all we can to combat this heinous violence. You know, at what point are they just empty words? We got to see some kind of action. And we have to see someone respect the Asian American community. So, stop AAPI hate. I wonder if that's going to come up in Joe Biden's speech tonight. Unlikely. But look, take nothing away from Joe Biden. I know a lot of people do right now. I mean, he's getting it everywhere in the polls. I read a poll, one of the first polls on Ukraine. 67% of the people disapproved of how he was handling Ukraine. Now it's down to about 47 disapproval. And as I said, WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think? Well, Asian Americans know what Joe Biden has done for the community in terms of stopping AAPI hate. He put out those executive orders at the beginning of his term. That's one thing. He's always been forceful, talking about these stories as they come up. So I've got no beef with Biden there. And you look at what he's done for the Asian American community. Well, his number two, his vice president, is Kamala Harris, African American, Asian American, first ever in history woman. He's got some cred with Asian Americans. Now, does he have cred with the rest of the country? That's the question. This State of the Union address tonight is going to be like none other that I've covered, I've seen. And I go back a ways with this kind of thing. Usually it's just a laundry list. And there is a kind of formula, right? People say, oh, State of the Union is strong. You got to say that. Stronger than you think. And it actually is. The economy is stronger than we think, but it's stronger for American oligarchs. American oligarchs, they can weather anything, right? Oh, did they lose 10 million? Oh, but they got 600 million. You see what I mean? It's just ridiculous if you're an oligarch. But if you're living on the edge, if you're on the fringe of economy like I am, I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, but I'm not living high in the hog either. I'm vegan. But I mean, the reality is you can live a comfortable life, a comfortable middle class life, but that gets threatened by inflation. Middle class is no longer middle class. It used to be a thing that if you were middle class, oh, that was great. My accountant used to say, "Oh, Emil, you should be happy." I said, "I'm not like Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer or Jeff Bezos." Oh, that's Emil, you're middle class. That's good. He said that to me like 30 years ago. But what's middle class now? Middle class to be, in line with inflation and all that. Middle class 30 years ago and middle class now, not the same. Not the same. And right now in middle class, if your family in America, teacher, firefighter, teacher maybe 60, 70,000, firefighter maybe 60, 70,000, 140,000, that's lower middle class. Right? You got to have a tech guy in there. Or you got to have someone making a lot of money. And then suddenly, oh, yeah, that's a more comfortable life. But if you have a family of 4 and you're trying to make it on that, you saw how during the pandemic, women were having problems. I got to pay a babysitter. I got to do that. I got to teach my kids algebra too on top. People are hurting. And then what if you have only a 1 paycheck family? This is a problem. The economy is robust if you're a corporate, if you're a corporate oligarch, if you're a regular person, you're hurting. And you don't hear the Republicans with a better answer, but people like to dump on the guy in charge, and they're going to dump on Biden. And I just hope that the speech tonight turns people around. He's got to give people hope. He's got to let people know that there's hope because help's on the way, and because we are the leader of the free world. I know, you're saying, hey, I can't eat freedom. Yes, you can. You can eat freedom. Try not eating freedom. Just try your life when freedom's not on the table. He's got to sell the fact that he's put together this coalition standing up to Putin. And this is really a battle for democracy winning in the world, global politics. You got to care about that to the degree that you value your freedom, your rights to do anything. Now, see, here's the thing. This should bring together people like all the anti-maskers and the anti-vaxxers. We should be united now. We're not. We need to be united now. Yeah, but we're not. But we should be. We really should be. Yeah, but we're not. I mean, on all the talk shows, I mentioned Romney yesterday. Romney actually was pretty good. He criticized the Republicans, called them the morons on his team when he said, hey, we got to repudiate Putin. We got to say Putin's evil. He's a killer. So Romney, as bad as Romney's been in the past, he's trying to show that he's a reasonable Republican, but everyone else they still think Trump is in charge. They don't want to cross Trump. Trump, who praised Putin. After today, to see what Putin has done to Ukraine, bombing hospitals, killing children, the death numbers, the death toll rising among Ukrainians. Putin a good guy? No, not a good guy. How can any true American find any room in their heart to support or say anything praiseworthy of Putin? And yet, there are pro-Putin Republicans. Unbelievable. So, the State of the Union address really has to be, and I've said this in my columns. Check out my columns on ALDEF, aaldef.org/blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. You said this has got to be democracy versus autocracy. You're either part of the autocrats club or the autocracy club or the democracy club. Choose democracy. Choose freedom. And then we got to figure out what's the fastest way to get the Ukrainians help. Because if we can't find that, it's going to get messier over there. A lot messier. Tomorrow on the PETA podcast, I'll release it tonight around early in the morning on Wednesday. I talked to a PETA Germany person who's going into Ukraine with a convoy of cars to save some animals, to save some companion animals, and to distribute some 40,000 pounds of dog food to shelters. There are some shelters in Ukraine. Because you got to figure there are people taking care of people. There are some good people, not everywhere, but not in this one border place where this PETA Germany person was. But I have seen reports where they're on the border of Poland and Ukraine, and there are like little bazaar type setups where anything that you can want, people are ready to share. And it's cold, it's freezing, and there's people with food and clothing and diapers. So there are efforts. It's just hard to find because it's not organized. You got to like use cell phones and, and texting and that kind of technology, but they're there. But tomorrow I'll release my interview with person who's gone into Ukraine to try to save dogs and some of her regrets about what she's seeing. All that tomorrow on the PETA podcast. And also tomorrow, look, because of time, we'll talk about the jury foreman of the Arbery trial tomorrow. Because we talk about race, we talk about politics. And it was a black jury foreman, and he just saw a lot of hate in the evidence that was revealed that they went over. And it's astonishing. 2022, more than 50 years after civil rights. And the hate is real. The hate is there. Well, we know the hate exists in Ukraine, and we try to pray. We do what we can. Prayer help. You got to hope. I mean, you got to think what the people who believed in nonviolence, what they would do. I think Thich Nhat Hanh would have been, I read some of his stuff now because I remember how he went into exile because he was against the Vietnam War. And his power was using meditation and the breath. I remember the Dalai Lama had a meditation where he breathes in the hate and he breathes out the love. So he breathes it in, takes it in, and he breathes it out as love. I'm big on two-step meditations. One of my favorite Thich Nhat Hanh meditations is you breathe in free or space, and you breathe out free. Breathe in space, think of space, and you breathe out free. Two breath meditations. And then you cycle and do them again. Sometimes they can help. So, look, let's hope we hear from the president something surprising tonight. Something that the United States will do to help Ukraine. Because this is day 6, and day 6 is not going very well. Because the Russians have stepped up their attacks. More Ukrainians are dying. And it's uncertain how much longer the Ukrainians can last. So let's hope we hear something from the president tonight that at least inspires us as citizens of the leading country of the free world. That's worth something. So, thank you for listening to today's show. Follow us on Twitter at Emil Amok. Do whatever the algorithm says to do. Like us on Facebook. Give us a thumb or a finger. Give us any finger. You can see more at amok.com, which is my website. Go to ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, ALDEF.org/blog, and catch the recordings of these shows. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, live, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. If you run Facebook at emilguillermo.media, you can see the little chat box. You can just put in a little chat. Hi, Emil. And, I might say hi back to you. Email at emil@amok.com. You can also check out, amok.com. You can do the email there. But, we just asked the question, what does an Asian American think? This is the Micro Talk Show, the AAPI and the AAXs and the ALLs. Oh, one thing I need to mention. CAATA.net is what it's called. CAATA.net. It's the consortium of Asian American theater artists. And I just joined them because, I occasionally I'll go up on the stage. I guess now that mask requirements are gone, I probably go on the stage. But it's funny, I find that I'm just susceptible. And I'm not susceptible because I'm a vegan or anything. That, if anything, that's why I'm healthy. But I find that, you get a scratchy throat, or, you can come down with a cold. And so I actually like performing right here at the, whatever you call it, the Emil Amok Gong Closet. And I'm planning some shows at some point later this year that would be Zoom. And, it's different. It's different. I mean, what I do here on the live stream is different from what I do on the show. But some people might think, you got to give me something extra, Emil. You got to give me something more. Well, okay. I'm just saying that I don't know if I'm going to be live anytime soon. in theaters, but I might. And anyway, so I joined the Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists, CAATA.net. And they're doing a reading of a Gordon Hirabayashi story play. If you don't know who Gordon Hirabayashi is, he is one of the people, along with Fred Korematsu, who stood up to Executive Order 9066. Now, a lot is made about Korematsu. There's actually a number of them, and they attacked different aspects of the order, and they all failed, but they all came together to ultimately fight their convictions 40 years after the fact, when some secret documents were discovered. And so there has been a one-man show put out about Hirabayashi, and it's been out for about 9-10 years. But they did a special reading as a benefit last night, and they're going to do it again. So go to caata.net, check it out. I think you can see it for free, then you can make a donation, or you can join them. I think it's worth it, because you got to support your artists. You got to support your artists. And that's it for our show today. Regular listeners, viewers, are you a viewer or are you a listener? Regular viewers of our show know that at this point, this is sort of the point of the program where I say, hey, it's meditative and it's helpful. If you're feeling down, if your crane's got you down, if another victim to the Stop AAPI Hate thing has got you, take this hand, put it here, put this hand over here. Just give it a little squeeze. It can help. If you don't think you belong, if you don't think things are right, if you feel some kind of shame, if you feel some kind of like inordinate amount of I don't belong here, a little squeeze, a little self squeeze helps. It does. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time.